I've got some thoughts, and they pertain to Joanna. And guys, I'm not sure she's not the best female fighter ever. Are you ready for that? I'm not sure she's not. And if she's not, I would be open to hearing that it's Chris Cyborg and then her. I don't know that I'd be open to anybody else being put in that mix. That's how highly I think of her. I would not judge you if you shared a different opinion. I just mean, for my own self, if I was privately just thinking to myself, who's the best ever female? I think it's probably her, and if it's not, it's Cyborg, but you get the point. With that said, I'm not sure there's a scenario anytime likely where she beats Rose. So, okay, Chael, how do you have her in front of Rose if you at the same breath are saying you don't think she can beat Rose? Well, that's a little bit of a deeper thought, and that's the reason I chose to rehash this up, which is just sometimes there's a matchup problem. I'll give you this as an example. As I'm getting my thoughts together, I'll give you this as an example. If Rose were to lose to somebody else, I not only would suspect, without even knowing who that somebody else was, but in the division as I look at the top 10 girls and maybe even could narrow it down to the top 5, not only would I suspect, but I would bet that Joanna would beat that person, right? I believe that Joanna could beat anybody in the top 10 aside from Rose. I'm not certain that Rose can beat everybody in the top 10. Are you with me? It was just kind of that Joanna had cleaned out the division and then Rose had Joanna's number. Do not mistake that for being a slight on Rose in any capacity. It's a reality to the sport that it matters who matches up with who and when. It can be a very frustrating part of the sport. Boxing more guilty than MMA, but where a manager, a trainer, or an athlete himself will be higher ranked, higher performed, sometimes grab a championship, but look at the roster and go, I need to stay away from that person. And that's not hard because that person could lose to this guy, and I can beat both of those guys. I just need to stay away from that person. You know, Floyd Mayweather had people like that. Zab Judah was one of them. He did not want to fight Zab. He didn't like the speed. He didn't like the southpaw. There was just all sorts of things he didn't like about that fight. He finally had that fight, and you could see Floyd is right. He was able to beat him, but you could see what Floyd saw. You could see that stance was a problem and that speed was a problem. And Floyd knew it before the fight. You'll see these things. It's not to knock on Floyd. I'm just trying to offer you guys an example. This is a very real thing. And it's only problematic when the person grabs the championship and then they can hold all the cards. And that's just a bit of a problem that I think that Joanna's in. And Joanna has come out in the past and talked about how hard it is for her to make weight. It would seem as though moving up to 125 pounds may be her clearest path back to a championship. I have no problem with that. I, for a large part, believe all championships are created the same. I don't really know that you have to go in and have it at your weight class. You know, kind of like what Conor did with Nate Diaz, where he lost that Nate fight, and he insisted on the same opponent in the same venue with the same rounds under the same rules in the same weight class. When any reasonable observer who saw that fight thought that Conor's biggest problem was the weight. And Dana White himself said, look, let's do the whole thing, but we'll do it at 155. And Conor stepped in and said, no. If we change anything, then it changes the great victory that I would like to have. I need it all to be the exact same. And that was a very honorable thing. I can't think of a time that's ever been done before, particularly in a non-championship fight. It was a very cool thing. But I would offer you that against the backdrop of should Joanna stay in that weight class to defeat Rose? And I would say no. I don't think that's a compelling fight. I'll tell you as a fan, I'm not interested in seeing it a third time. I would watch it a third time. But if that was announced today, I would not be jumping for joy, and I don't think that you guys would either, for whatever reason. It just doesn't have the same luster and allure really to anybody, including Rose. Even Rose isn't looking to do that fight. It does to Joanna. Okay, fine. I don't have a problem with her getting a fresh coat of paint and changing weight classes, and nothing is more effective, faster for a person's career than switching weight classes. You get a total fresh look. Yeah, maybe I've never beaten anybody in that class, but I also have never lost within that weight class, and it's viewed like that, and the public will give you a fresh start. I do think that she could capture the championship at 125. It is not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed for anybody. The sport's just too hard right now. But I don't think that she needs to lock herself into a Rose scenario. I don't disagree fully with what Joanna is doing. There are some strategies that I can come on here, break down for you guys, and tell you they won't work, and I can explain to you why they won't work, and I explain to you past historical evidence of the blueprint not working. I'm in a unique situation. I do like that everything that comes out of Joanna's mouth is Rose. I like that. If you're trying to get a fight with Rose, I understand that. It also comes from a disrespectful and at times even a trolling aspect, claiming that she's the champion when Rose is standing there with the belt. There's a bit of trolling, which creates a frustration, which creates a dialogue, which is goal number one. So I'm okay with that, and I don't think that she crossed the line to being corny. I think she's right there in that sweet spot where she's going, this is how I see it. And if somebody wants to prove me wrong, I'll be standing right here. She is on the line, but I still think she falls to that side, and I like that. What I'm offering to you, and the reason I can tell you that this is a bit of a new one for me, is I have seen that done before, but I have not seen it done before, where I could bring you evidence and show you that it worked when you had 2 losses out of 2 fights. So she may teach us all something new here. And there is a time and a place for 2 losses in 2 fights to demand a fight 3. And though it's very rare, we would all stipulate to Cormier versus Jones right now. We would drop what we were doing and run to the TV and turn that on if we found out they were fighting. That's a bit an anomaly. I don't suggest for you that a Rose and Joanna is ever going to touch that in terms of the fans wanting it. And I think that if Rose didn't want it, and I don't suggest for you that I know that she doesn't, I'm just trying to put myself in her shoes. Really hard fight. If you're being really honest about it, you go, hey, that's a really hard fight. Matter of fact, I didn't know either time if I could win it. I knew it was that hard, but I did win. I did win. And whether I got away with one or luck was on my side or I'm just better than I thought or it's a good match, it doesn't make any difference. That's what dreams are made of. So if you're Rose and you looked at it like that and said, hey, whether I pulled one off by the skin of my teeth or not, I did it twice, and I'm looking at you in the rear view. I'm moving ahead. And there's no reason I should have to go back to that. I think that we are seeing a little of that by the fact that Rose doesn't respond. And that has to be infuriating for Joanna. Oh, it has to be infuriating for her. Rose is helping. I apologize. Joanna is helping Rose very much by doing interviews, doing the heavy lifting, doing fights, grabbing the microphone and saying her name over and over. And I'm sure that Rose is purposely frustrating Joanna by not responding. I don't know where that fight's going to go. There is a big part of me that feels we are going to see that a third time. And there's a big part of me that feels I'm going to do my little piece to influence the opposite to happen. Only because we saw it twice, neither was a huge draw. The second was necessary by the company standards because so much was invested into Joanna, and I think they agreed with me that either she's the best female fighter ever or she's in the top 2. I think they agreed with me. I think they thought she got caught, and they thought we need to run this one back. And I can remember as a fan watching the fight, I thought the same thing. I thought Rose did catch her. It wasn't to say Rose couldn't beat her, but I thought she caught her. I think Daniel Cormier caught Stipe, right? Whenever there's a one punch that's a surprise punch and the other guy goes down, it qualifies as getting caught. That doesn't mean you always run them back. Sometimes you let the fighter get away with one and move forward and chalk it up to a dream made and a dream failed by somebody else. Sometimes that's just sport. So that's my thought on that because I am observing what Joanna does, and I'm very curious how this is going to play out for her, and I'm not certain, and I'm not ready to write off that it's not going to play out exactly the way she wants simply because of a lack of parity. And we've talked about this over here before. The way to become the number 1 contender in female fighting at 145 pounds is to raise your hand and say, I want to fight Chris Cyborg. I'm not sure that's not one of the top ways to do it in Rose's weight class. There is other bodies. It's not quite the same, but it's not terribly far off. let's just make believe. I want to move on from this, but let me just offer you something. What if they went out and fought again, Joanna and Rose, and Joanna won? It would be extremely unfair to not then give Rose an immediate rematch. Am I wrong? I mean, can Joanna come in, grab the belt, and go, ha, that's that, told you all? When the record is still 2-1 Rose? I know fairness has nothing to do with this sport, but we always like to talk about it, don't we? So can we at least agree, whether it's followed or not, that the fair thing to do in that scenario would be give Rose a fight, an immediate rematch, which means we got to watch them fight a fourth time when we're already confronted with the evidence that part 1, 2, and 3 were not, they weren't tremendously look forward to. Two talented gals. One has nothing to do with the other. Don't take it as a slide. Romero and Whitaker wasn't looked forward to the first time or the second time. I bring that up because the second time might be fight of the year. Certainly is in the lead for round of the year. Maybe greatest round of all time. I've heard that said by many people. So I bring that up that it's not a slide on the athletes. There's just something that creates an anticipation, right? To further that point, Cormier and Stipe, it just didn't have that buzz. But boy, if you sat down in the office ahead of time at the UFC and you thought, hey, let's put these two together, great idea. I mean, you'd be giving high fives and you'd be celebrating. On paper, everything logical, even for a gambling man, that one is a home run. Something happened. And sometimes something happens, you can't explain it. It's something you only know in hindsight. And the reason I offer you that, Rose has been a guest on this show. She listens regularly. She texts me after the show. At no point here do I want to slide her by saying it's not a heavily anticipated match. It just isn't. It just isn't. Joanna is doing her part aside from losing twice. She is doing her part to go out there and build that. But Rose isn't meeting her part way. That's fine. Rose has her eye on other things. But if you're speaking to building it up and having anticipation of a fight, I think there's a couple of ingredients that are missing. And